welcome to Crawlspace. I'm Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing terrible, Tim. Just terrible. Life has just really got me down, and I don't know how much longer I can even do this show, so I might be calling this my last episode.
Oh, maybe you need a weekend at Muffy's.
Maybe I need a weekend at Muffy's, but that was my April Fool's joke.
Gotcha, yes. Today is another one of these episodes that we've been doing this year where we're covering holiday-themed slasher movies with Mike Morford, the true crime guy from Criminology and a bunch of other podcasts. Today is no different. We're covering April Fool's Day, the mystery and horror slasher movie kind of from 1986. It is a lot of fun breaking down this movie with you and Mike Morford.
It really is, and we've really carved ourselves a very, very specific niche here for what types of genres we are talking about, or the type of genre we are talking about. Holiday-themed slasher horror movies. It's really funny. We're very excited about this particular movie because I think we were all fired up about it in a different way, just because of like the ridiculousness of the characters and the plot itself. So it moves at a pretty good pace, and then at the end we kind of come to a mutual decision that maybe we should start covering good movies together, which is pretty funny. That we're like, why are we forcing ourselves to watch these at best? The best one was Black Christmas. And after that, like, they've all been at best mediocre.
Yeah, that's fair. We did My Bloody Valentine, Leprechaun, New Year's Evil, and now April Fool's Day. And also, we should let you know that we have spun these type of episodes off into their own feed. It's called Movies by Crawlspace. You can get all those aforementioned episodes located there as well. And I think we're planning to keep this going, maybe break away and do some other kinds of movies at some point, but it's just a lot of fun.
It really is a lot of fun, and I'm seeing Movies by Crawlspace having its own category. So we'll have this super hyper-focused genre of holiday slashers, and then we had been talking about perhaps having some of our industry colleagues come on, anybody affiliated in law enforcement, so they can review a thriller or a suspense or a horror movie that features heavy police involvement, and we can go through what went right and what went wrong in the production of that particular movie. So yeah, you're right. We definitely want to start branching off and categorizing our reviews beyond the holiday slasher ones, because at some point that's going to run out.
We're already like halfway done, really. So I don't know. I hope our audience likes it as much as we enjoy doing it. Obviously, it's all fictional and extra fictional when we're talking about this movie, which is a little frustrating. You'll know what I mean by that as you listen. But yeah, we're gonna be back with this style episode, and we're gonna do some better movies soon. More widely revered movies, hopefully. All right, so follow us on social media at Crawlspace Podcast or Crawlspace Pod.
And we're going to break real quick for commercial, and we will be back with true crime guy Mike Morford to discuss the cult classic April Fool's Day. Possible cult classic?
Yeah, I guess it's a cult classic.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program.
Welcome back to Crawlspace. Mike Morford, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Doing great, but I'm a little nervous because we've decided to cover yet another holiday horror movie, and I forgot to watch it, guys.
What?
No.
I forgot to watch it.
Oh my God. Well, why? We can just reschedule.
No, we have to do it now because it's
April Fools.
Oh, you got me.
I got you.
Oh my God. Okay. So here we are back here for the fifth time. Is this the fifth time, right? We got four previous ones?
At least.
Feels like
4?
34.
It feels like New Year's Evil felt like 5 alone.
Yeah. So New Year's Evil, Leprechaun, My Bloody Valentine, and Black Christmas. This is our fifth venture into holiday-themed slasher movies, and mostly from decades ago. Today, we're speaking about the classic April Fool's Day. And this is quite a Quite a bizarre movie. 58% on the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes, so not the worst reviews, not terrible. Audience liked it a little less than the critics, 48%, but basically about split. So your audience on this one is pretty much split across the board. The movie is from 1986. And it was written and directed by Fred Walton, who wrote the screenplay for and directed When a Stranger Calls, and also When a Stranger Calls Back, that I find hilarious. That's the name of that sequel.
I'm sorry, great scenes in those movies. So Fred Walton does a good job constructing these super suspenseful scenes, but the rest of the plot is just sort of pieced together based around these really cool ideas of a scene. Famous one in When a Stranger Calls is when the phone call is coming from inside the house. Also kind of a ripoff of Black Christmas when the caller was coming from inside the house there as well. But Tim, not to correct you, the writer was actually Danilo Bach. And the only reason why I'm pointing this out is because if you look at this person's resume, it's nothing like April Fool's Day. I mean, he wrote Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Beverly Hills Cop 3. It seems like he was more in the comedy crime genre.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so this guy Walton didn't write it at all, it seems. I don't know where I got that.
Most of the ones that we've covered, it's been the same writer-director, I think. So we
Right.
just kind of walk down that assumption.
Before we get too far along, I got to ask you guys, were you guys even alive in 1986?
Yeah.
Yes, Morph. I don't know why you think you're like 40 years older
I
than
feel
us.
like I'm like so much older than you. How old were you guys? 2 or 3 years old?
I was like 10. I was 9.
Are you sure? Okay.
Am I sure?
5.
Yes, I'm sure
Okay.
when I was born.
Okay.
I was 5 in 1986.
I was 15, so
Okay.
definitely.
So you're not that much older.
Yeah, but when you get up here to this age, every year counts. All right, let's roll.
Well, every weird moment of this movie counts, and we open up on a videotape, like almost like a found footage opening where the characters are holding the camera and they're sort of interviewing some of the other characters, talking about taking a ferry to a friend's house across the bay. So right away, we're getting this setup where there's a lot of friends, college friends, so young kids. They're taking a ferry to an isolated island with just a house to meet their friend.
I appreciate the fact that throughout the movie, they refer to the place in which they came as the mainland. And they always say the mainland, not the mainland. They call it the mainland. And I love that. And I actually said out loud, I'm like, I want to live in a place where I come from the mainland or people are coming in from the mainland. So you've already set up that isolation and it's it already made you feel like you're severed from society.
The ferry ride itself was the difficult part of the movie to get through. It felt long, and there was the worst attempts at like college-aged humor, and to me it was like, oh, when's this movie gonna get going? And then finally they got off the boat, and it got a little bit better to me.
Yeah. Famously, Ken Oland there from Leprechaun. We just spoke about him just about a month ago. He's also in this movie. The characters are all super annoying, especially the men. They're all completely ridiculously annoying, especially Chaz. Like, I wanted to like punch Chaz.
Which one was Chaz?
Chaz was the cool guy.
He was the one who said to one of the guys on the dock, he said, "Guy, your fly is open and your hostess Twinkie
yeah.
is hanging out." And the guy looks down to his fly and then he leans in and like kisses his forehead. It was like makes a smooching sound and then walks away. It's like, what in the hell just happened?
The humor was weird. It was some weird attempts at humor. Now, I personally like the uppity Wall Street college guy who was trying to suck up to become an employee of the host father.
Right. That's Harv or Hal. Yeah.
He was funny, at least to me.
I looked into who played Chaz, Clayton Roner. He kind of grew up into a silver fox, I gotta say.
I mean, he's got nice hair in the movie. The character is just so hateable. He does a few other things. There's another part on that barge on the way over to the house. He's holding the video camera, which is like probably an annoying character trait anyway. Like, so you're the one just like going up to everyone, being like, "Hey, give me something for the camera." But he goes over to Nan and he coughs his way into the conversation. Like, he stands next to her. She's like reading, and then he's like, like that. And she's like, "Yes." And it was clearly like a fake cough. Well, it wasn't. He didn't even like attempt for it to be like concealed as a real cough. Like it was just so comically fake. And then he smells her, and then he shows her that he's carrying like a porn book or something. It's like there's nothing redeemable about this character.
Yeah, she's reading some kind of fancy literature book, and he goes up to her with a porn book basically and is showing off his reading ability.
I also love how you see like how they're just also into April Fool's Day, which I think is so funny because I don't remember ever being this into April Fool's Day after you're a certain age.
No, and no one should be this into April Fool's Day.
Well, they went all out. They said, look, the theme of this movie is April Fool's Day. We're going all out for April Fool's.
Right. And actually, just to back up a little bit, in the opening credits, there is a little bit of foreshadowing with this because the young woman Muffy, whose house that everyone is going over to, she's cleaning up the house a little bit. She finds like a Jack-in-the-Box from her childhood. It kind of brings back memories, and it pops open with like a little monster inside. And then her whole family, when she was a kid, were like laughing at her scared reaction to the Jack-in-the-Box with the little monster inside. So the foreshadowing is her family seems to love pranks too, but also, yes, all of these friends are seemingly in on that. They just seem to love pranks.
And Muffy, by the way, is played by the girl that played in Valley Girl.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she was
a pretty
good.
big movie back in the 80s.
So back on the barge here, there's a switchblade makes an appearance, and then they're talking about a game of stretch. where never heard of it. I don't know if this is an old pirate game, but you basically throw a switchblade down on the deck and then you reach for it, and then if you fall, it's the other person's turn. I'm really unclear on the rules of this game. Didn't seem like there were any good rules whatsoever. There was two guys playing Stretch, Arch, and Buck.
They had to think of something to do because it was the longest barge ride in history. The movie's like an hour and 29 minutes long, and like 29 minutes into the movie, they're still on this barge. I'm like, they're going to have to do a lot over the next hour of this movie to make it all make sense.
Do you think that they shot most of the movie and then they were like, oh, our movie is like 65 minutes. We need to go back to the barge, everybody, and start like stuffing this movie?
I think they might have. They had the movie they wanted, but it was probably an hour long, and they said, this isn't going to cut it. We need more barge footage.
Where can we squeeze some stuff in? And actually, Tim, on that stretch thing, I actually went back and listened to that again. Like, I think I might have gone back twice just to be like, what did they just say? Stretch?
Because that's what they were doing. They were like stretching towards the knife, but it was very unclear on like, what are they behind a line? Is someone holding them as they stretch? Like, absolutely no rules given. You just kind of see them stretching in between shots of other people like Chaz and Nan and these other people. But a fight breaks out during the game of stretch, and they start throwing the knife, the switchblade, at each other. And Arch throws it at the other fellow, and it stabs him in the stomach, and he falls into the water. But we realize very quickly that was a prank. and everyone's fine. And the people who jumped into the water to save the guy who got stabbed, they're all fine too.
Yep, and everyone's cool with it. Everyone's like, well, that's how they do it here. These are the jokes. We'll just, let our adrenaline come back down, move on to get onto this island.
Well, not everybody was fine because the deckhand dove in too, and what happened to him?
Oh, right.
So this was a really crazy part. So then a real accident occurs, supposedly. So Buck, one of the deckhands, jumps into the water with the rope or one of the ropes from the boat to try to tie it to the dock. But I'm fairly certain that's not how you do that. I don't know.
I don't sail very often, but...
I used to work on a boat. I actually used to work on a boat for about 6 months, and I'm telling you, that's not how that happens.
You don't jump into the ocean?
You don't jump into the water. You tie it on from the boat. You stand on the deck and do it.
Well, that's the funny part. On this boat ride over, they showed him like several times trying to master, like he was roping a cattle or something. He's trying to rope and catch this hook, and he never could do it. And then finally he's in the water trying to do it by hand. So I knew it wasn't going to go well.
Oh, so he wasn't even a good deckhand.
No.
Right. And he gets crushed by the weight of the boat against the dock. And it's almost like it seems like half of his face was kind of crushed. And he comes up onto the deck and he's freaking out. And there's like a speedboat and they take him away and he goes to the hospital. Everyone's very
disturbed by this. They hope he's alive. They're going to find out later how he's doing.
It's like eyeballs hanging on his cheek.
The sheriff
Yeah.
is the one that gives him the boat. So they leave the barge there. Instead of taking that back because it's too big and too slow, they take the speedboat. Then the sheriff, he borrows a boat from Muffy's family and takes that away. So
Right.
now he's taking the last boat off of this island. I think we should set that for the
I see. That's a
listeners.
good point.
Back to the mainland.
So then Buck is on his way to the hospital. And as he's going to the hospital, he yells, "They did it. They did it." I don't know what he means exactly by that. And in fact, I don't know that we ever find out. But that was what he yelled. So then they get inside the house. Great views. Chaz says, "Burn my bags, baby," when
Yeah.
he sees the views inside the house.
Does that mean he's staying forever?
I think that's what he meant, yeah.
Okay.
Someone says, "On a clear day, you can see the Kennedys." Someone mentions Agatha Christie. So definitely getting the feeling that this is like an Agatha Christie play.
Staged.
Yeah. The people kind of separate. They go walking through the house. They go looking in the bedrooms. The girls are in the kitchen and they're reading a magazine and just talking about sex. I kind of was shaking my head at this scene. I don't know. I don't think that's...
I don't know what girls back in the 80s talked about when they were hanging out together, but some of the stuff the guys were talking about with each other were pretty whack too. So I don't know if that was realistic either, what they were talking about.
Yeah, very strange. Not really sure where anyone's coming from with their conversations. Arch is like constantly doing like a gay voice to the camera. He does it like 2 or 3 times in the movie. So I don't know. He's trying to be funny. I mean, they're college age kids. I guess it's goofy. And that kind of thing was much more acceptable in 1986. I don't think they would have done that today. There's whoopee cushions. There's an intentionally broken chair leg. It's just like pranks everywhere. It's exhausting,
It
to
is.
be honest.
They all make a toast, and when they go to drink, they're all cups that won't let you drink, and it pours out onto their face and runs down their shirt. What else? There was a sink that when you turn on the faucet, it shoots you in the face with the water.
Yeah.
Yep.
All harmless pranks.
And there were a bunch of things that people found in like drawers in the bedrooms or in the bathrooms where they were staying. Some like, I don't know, S&M gear, like a
Like
leash
leather.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leather straps.
Studded masks. It's like a heroin paraphernalia.
Yeah, I was going to say, like a heroin kit. It was like a couple of syringes and like a tourniquet.
Jeez.
But then the one guy, what's the uppy guy?
Is that a Harv or Hal?
Yeah. He finds something that's maybe a little bit more sinister in his room. He finds articles about an accident that killed some people in the fog, and he starts to read it, but he hides it when somebody else comes into the room, so you don't really get to see what it is or what it said, but it felt like there was something there that was, might have something to do with what was going to happen.
Nothing really came of that, though, right? Did I miss something?
Not that I recall, other than you kind of just knew that he was being a little shady about what he found or didn't find in his room.
Now, later on, somebody does question that. They throw it back up in his face and said, "Hey, I came in and saw you hiding that article real quick," and he sort of brushes it off.
Right. That was it, though.
So Arch, I believe this is the character that we're talking about. So that's Biff from Back to the Future. Definitely took me a minute to recognize him, but that's good old Biff.
I knew he looked familiar. I couldn't place him, though.
Yeah, he's in all 3 of the Back to the Future movies. Really good in those movies. And he's fine in this. He's not as annoying as the Chaz character.
Yeah, Chaz was pretty tough to deal with.
And then Arch kind of gets locked in one of the rooms. And you kind of feel some tension starting to build. Music starts to swell a little bit. There's a baby crying, but one of the young women finds a tape player that was the source of the baby crying. So at this point, it's kind of like, again, like I'm just kind of shrugging, like shaking my head, like why are all these pranks happening? Like this is obnoxious.
Well, each prank, I think, had to do with something, supposedly, because they never elaborated on it, had something to do with something from that person's past. And the girl that heard the baby crying supposedly had an abortion.
Yeah.
Oh,
They got
okay.
into an argument. Her and the host, Muffy, got into an argument over it that was witnessed by one of the other people. So, and then the couple that find the S&M stuff, they're sort of the adventurous, openly sexual people in the group. So each person's stuff that they find in their room sort of hints that it might be geared towards them specifically.
Oh, wow. Deep analysis.
Oh, I went deep.
And then Rob, who is the Ken Oland character there, he isn't angry at Kit, his seemingly girlfriend, but he's just angry. And we see him in tidy whities at this point, something for the ladies. And then as they're turning down for the night, going to bed, he'll turn off the light, and then another light in the room turns on.
More hijinks.
And then there's a doorknob that keeps coming off of somebody's door that they go to leave and they can't leave because their doorknob comes off. It's just nonstop prankery going on.
Nonstop. You mentioned Chaz and Nikki, kind of the more adventurous couple. And so they are having sex in one of the rooms, but very confused about the sexual position that we're looking at there. I had to pause it just to see what, like,
if it was even possible.
yeah, is this even possible? It looks horrible. It doesn't look like either of them are having fun. Her legs are like crossed behind his back, and his right foot is next to her face. So if you can figure that out, best.
See, I actually got a kick out of it. I thought that was was a funny moment, just because it was so deliberately stupid that it was just thrown in there as a pure joke.
Yeah, maybe they're just so adventurous they can't do missionary anymore. Like they've just run out of positions.
Pretty weird.
Got to have a lot of pliability on his part there.
Okay, and then Skip is outside on the dock, and he's seemingly up to something. And he goes to the boathouse, and he apparently gets killed there. We don't see the killer. We also don't really see his death. We just kind of see him get pulled back. We know the creepy music's there. He's in the boathouse alone, and he kind of gets pulled back.
This is where, to me, it sort of turns into the traditional 80s horror movie. People start separating, and when they do, that's when the deaths start happening.
Yes. And then we get some weirdness from our host, Muffy, which is a great name, by the way. Muffy St. John. Love the name. So in the morning, the next morning, she's cooking breakfast, and a couple of the characters walk in. And when she sees them walk in, she like sprints up the stairs, like seemingly in the middle of cooking breakfast, like she like abandons her eggs on the stove.
And she seems off, right?
Yeah.
Right away, you could tell that doesn't seem like the same person from the day before.
Yeah, and I wrote, this feels like a clue. Yeah, her hair is all disheveled. She doesn't want anyone to see her without her hair done, is what it seems like.
And well, one of the guys even said who hooked up with her last night and made her night because she was so different from the day before.
Always about sex.
And then there's a soccer game in the field, or in the yard, I guess, and it feels very improvised. And it made me wonder how much more was improvised. I had to wonder about that scene from the kitchen when the women were looking at the magazine and like commenting on it. I felt like a lot of that might have been improvised, and that is really not fair to those actors. Like, I'm not sure that was improvised, but like they didn't do the script writer any favors with that scene, and the director sure didn't do anybody any favors with letting that scene play the way it did.
You're right. It's probably like the scene in the script was just girls sit at table and talk about sex while reading magazine. And then the director's like, well, just talk about sex.
Yeah, he's like, here's a magazine.
Here's a magazine. Talk about sex.
Do what you guys do, And they're in the kitchen, too.
Maybe that's one of the parts where they weren't going to have it in and they needed the extra time in the movie. And they said, oh, we got to put this sex talk in there.
Okay, so then Ken and Kit go over to the boathouse, and they are making out. They're hooking up. They're laying down on the floorboards. And dead Skip, the guy who had just gotten killed in the boathouse, he floats underneath the floorboards. Kit sees him, his dead face, staring back up at her from under the floorboards in the water, and so they freak out. Yeah, that was a really funny moment, I thought, and kind of a great shot too. At that point, Ken and Kit, they're convinced that Skip is dead and something weird's happening here. They're trying to look for Skip, which was weird, a little weird to me too, because they just saw him dead. Like they're like, "Where's Skip?" Like, don't you know? But I guess they were trying to confirm that he wasn't dead. I don't know.
And Skip was one of the main jokesters that from the beginning from On the Barge. So you know that he's the jokester that, he's just off messing around, going to play a prank on us or something. And, that's what I think they were initially thinking.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program.
So they can't find Skip, so Ken and Kit thinks he might be dead. So they're kind of looking around the house. Arch grabs a baseball bat. Nan confronts Muffy about a tape. Is this the baby tape?
Yes, that's what I was guessing. Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't understand what was happening there. She said, "You mean the tape just got there?" And so I guess that was the tape with the baby crying, and then I believe the abortion comes up in this scene.
Yeah.
And so then Arch Biff, otherwise known as Biff,
Thank you.
He's in the woods looking for Skip, and he steps in a trap.
I got to back you up there. I guess I just have to open up this scene a little bit. He's looking for him, and he's yelling his name, and the only response he's getting from the forest is like one twig snap every like 5 or 6 seconds, which makes him turn around one way. And he hears it again, and he turns around the other way, and they show this snake. And I was crying. I was laughing so hard because it's just the scene was so played out. The snake is like there, and it rises up. It's like ready to strike, and he's yelling for Skip. And then a twig snaps, and he turns and he walks by the snake, and it's a close up of the snake, and his feet pass by, and they just play up that suspense. Probably it was like 4 or 5 times where he's going back and forth, and then finally he steps in the trap. This perfectly placed trap in the woods next to a snake.
And the snake never tries to leave. It doesn't like slither off to
No.
escape like most snakes will. This one is sitting there defending its territory and ready to bite Biff.
It's actually like going at his face as he's hanging upside down and swinging.
Right. The rope trap hangs him upside down, and the snake is like, slithering near his face. Could bite his face. Didn't seem like it actually bit his face, but it seemed like it was close. But also, I do just wonder about the woods. Like, we never got an idea of how big the island was. Is it all Muffy's family's property?
Yeah, so maybe it's small. Maybe it's just a patch of land.
Maybe yes or maybe no, but like, who put who put that trap there? Like Muffy's family? Like, what? Why was that trap there?
And are they trying to center him in that area by snapping twigs and being like, he's almost there, snap another twig?
I don't have any idea.
Either way, it scoops him up, and then these feet come into play.
And so we're kind of led to believe that he's dead there.
Yeah, someone comes along, kicks the snake away.
Oh yeah, he screams like he's terrified, and when he sees whoever is coming after him, like absolutely blood-curdling scream, and then we're just led to believe he's dead at that point. And then Muffy is seeming really suspicious now and unhinged. She thinks the dead guys are going to be fine. And at this point in my notes, I wrote, I think there's 2 Muffys.
I wrote that in my notes when I looked at the credits, and she's actually credited as 2 people. So I'm like,
oh, that's stupid. In the opening credits?
No. Sorry, if you're looking on like IMDb or whatever.
One of the few things I remembered from seeing this when I was a teenager was that she was playing 2 people. So I went into it trying not to think too much about that, but I knew already.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a fake twist anyway, but we'll get there. It's so stupid anyway. Okay, but then probably one of the most suspenseful scenes happens with Hal or Harv and Nikki. So I'm not really sure what's happening here. I guess they're checking the well.
There was no water. The water was running out all brown and she was like, oh, the water main it happens sometimes. The water main blew.
And she wanted water really bad, so she said, well, you can go to the well and get some. And I'm thinking, that was some shit-looking well water. I would not drink anything out of there. First
thing, yeah. You look at that well water, and it's like they've dropped a flashlight in it, the bucket in it. It's like murky and gross.
Yeah,
like,
who would drink that?
You want your tea that bad? And then it turns out she had Perrier the whole time. One of my favorite lines in the scene, out of nowhere, this guy hits on Nikki and says that he's really interested in plowing her field.
With his southern accent.
Chaz was her boyfriend, right?
The look on her face didn't really seem too discouraged by it, so I thought maybe there's going to be a love triangle here, and she's going to move on to this guy.
Then they're kind of figuring out which one of them is going to go into the well to, I guess, retrieve the bucket and the flashlight that was dropped. And Nikki just kind of goes. She just kind of volunteers. And she starts climbing down the ladder. And one of the rungs on the well ladder breaks. And she falls into the water. She finds not 1, not 2, but 3 corpses in the well water down there with her, and she's screaming. This was a pretty good moment, a good little scare.
Let's catch up to her. So we know the bodies have to be Skip, who vanished when he went out for the walk, Biff, who got hung upside down, and that's the last time we saw him. And who's the third one? The girl with the abortion.
Nan.
Oh.
They start asking, where is she? And they said the last time I saw her, she had an argument with Buffy over an abortion.
Right, and the body it looked like she had like a wedding dress, or like it was at least a white dress on.
Okay.
So that's the 3 corpses that are in the well that they're going to drink from.
I just want to remind everybody that the 3 of us watched this movie within the last day and a half, right? Like, we all just watched it pretty recently. Even after such a short period of time between talking about it and watching it, we're still like, who's in the well?
Yeah, still trying to figure it out. Yeah, it was a little unclear. I also didn't realize it was 3 corpses in there until second viewing, going through it again this morning. I thought there was just 2. And yeah, I didn't know who they were. I don't know, could Arch's body have even gotten into the well in that amount of time between when he got hung up and I guess killed? So then Nikki and Harv, they get out of the well. Nikki's all freaked out. She's in the house, and you mentioned the Perrier. This was one of the funniest moments when Muffy put a glass of water in front of Nikki, and she gets afraid of the water.
Yeah, now she's got a lifelong fear of water. Thanks. Thanks,
yeah,
Muffy.
like a cylinder, a glass of water.
Yeah.
That was great.
And Muffy not getting why is like, oh, don't worry, that's Perrier.
Right. She's like, why didn't you just give me that in the first place then, instead of making me go down in the well?
And then Ken gets in touch with the police. They call the police to tell them about the disappearances and possible murders, and they also want to know about the guy from the hospital who got injured in the barge earlier. I think that's Buck. So the cop says that Buck is fine. He's at the hospital. The cop is at the hospital visiting Buck. We're led to be confused intentionally here because it's like, oh, well, I guess Buck's fine. Buck's not dead.
And the people thought he was a suspect, that he was the one that was doing this shit once they put it together that people were dying. It's got to be this guy out for revenge because he got his face smashed in by the boat. And the cop says, no, I've been with him all night in the hospital. He's fine.
And a couple of things to note here. The constable or whatever is actually, it seems like he's talking from the hospital, but we're not hearing most of what he's saying. It's Ken, right? Is that the other character's name?
That's his name in real life. I forget his character's name, but yeah, I've just been calling him Ken.
Yeah, it's a guy from Leprechaun. So a guy from Leprechaun is talking on the phone, and there's a pause, and he says something to the effect of, even Muffy? Or something like that.
Or what about Muffy? Something like that.
Yeah, he warns them all to stay together, basically. That don't be alone with Muffy.
And then the guy from Leprechaun makes a comment about Muffy, and I thought it was interesting that no one asked why he said that. Like, he storms out of the room. He's like, okay, we got to kind of lock down everything. But no one was like, what was that comment about Muffy? Why did he bring up Muffy? And now you're acting all paranoid.
And several seconds went by, so you could tell that
yes,
the officer was telling him something important, but nobody in the room was like, what do you say? What do you have to say? And that was kind of weird.
Okay, and then Kit, Ken's girlfriend there, she's wandering around the house and she finds a photograph of 2 little girls in Muffy's father's study. And so she's wondering who that is. It looks like, they're kids or something, but they're the same age and they're dressed the same. So we're starting to learn something here. Maybe there are 2 Muffies or something stupid like that. And so, at this point, Muffy is really acting kind of weird and people are wondering what her deal is. And then she walks in as people are kind of talking about her. And she goes upstairs to her room and she seems like she's upset at the others.
I do think it's funny. Everyone is trying to figure out what's going on in that scene. And rightfully so. They've seen dead bodies. They've had crazy shit happening all around them. And she's acting so strange, ridiculously strange. And they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to be proactive about it. Kit, she's the one that stops everybody. And it's like, can you all hear yourselves? What about staying together? What about friendships being for life? And that's when Muffy walks in because she was like, we're really talking about Muffy actually being responsible for... And then Muffy walks in. So I'm assuming she was going to say responsible for killing these people. But what other conclusion should you be coming to at this point?
And I think we need to back up for a second, too, because One of the things the officer said while he was on the phone was he's going to come rescue them, bring the boat back, and shoot a flare off when he got there. So they should all stay together in the same room, keep the house locked down, and when they saw the flare, to come out as a group and go to the boat to escape.
But nobody does stay together. They all separate pretty quickly. And Chaz and Nikki have an argument, and Nikki really wants to leave. She says 3 people are dead. And Chaz says, you got to look at the bright side of things. Everyone's going to be okay.
What? That's not a bright side. That's just being like woefully ignorant to what's happening around you. And all he wants to do is get laid at that moment.
Right. So we're getting a lot of mixed signals as audience members. Like what is real? What isn't real? Are people dead, or is everyone going to be okay? You know, like the characters are telling us both things. So Chaz then tries on this S&M gear, I guess, with some kind of like
hood.
I don't know. It was like a leather hood.
Yeah.
And he puts it on, and yes, he's trying to get laid.
She doesn't appreciate the first one. She's more into the second one.
But apparently Chaz is dead. He gets stabbed in the groin and dies.
Yeah, it looks like after some buildup, after she leaves, he's just kind of laying there on the bed, you know, come and get me, come and get me. He can't see, I guess, through the hood. And it cuts to a couple of like ominous shots of like doors kind of half opening and stuff. And then she's gathering some other goods from the bathroom or something, like her bathroom products, and she's coming back in. And then he's on the bed covering his private area, and she's talking to him. He's not moving, not breathing, and then she's like, you're just gonna have to put it back in your pants, and she like hits his hand, and it cuts to like a very limited amount of blood for what I'm assuming the intended act on him was.
If that happened, I don't think he would die from that.
No.
Wouldn't he be like in excruciating pain, rolling around, and you know, so for there to be no blood doesn't mean it means he didn't bleed to death. So how did he actually die?
It made me think, like, was he strangled and then this act was perpetrated on him? Because like there'd be a lot of screaming and a lot of blood and a lot of activity.
Yeah. So again, we're kind of getting mixed signals from the movie. Yeah. So Ken and Kit go to the attic. They're waiting for the flare. They find some dolls in the attic. And they're seemingly the characters from the movie that we're watching, like almost like they're voodoo dolls or replicas of the characters having, you know, been in the positions that they're in. It's very Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians, because in that story, the Indians fall from the shelf. And in this, they're kind of trying to do the same thing where the dolls are like, you know, are dead, you know, and then that means the real people are dead too.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
So there's at this point, so who do we have left now? We don't know.
The guy from Leprechaun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got him. You've got his blonde girlfriend.
His blonde girlfriend from Friday the 13th, Part 2.
I thought she was in Friday the 13th. Okay. The girl whose boyfriend had his testicles apparently cut off, she's around someplace, right?
Well, it was indicated that she was killed. The closet door opens
okay. She has a frightened look on her face, like, okay, we don't see it. But we never see what happens to Wall Street guy.
He's hanging at one point.
Oh, yeah, right. We see him later.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it's when they come down from the attic.
Yeah, so at this point, Ken and Kit are basically like the only characters really in the movie for like, you know, from like a half an hour to like 5 minutes left in the movie. They're almost like the only characters. They're walking around the house. They do find a lot of corpses, cavalcade of bodies moment that's in most slasher movies where they find Harv hanging. But again, like no one, you didn't see him get hung. He's just hanging. And they find blood everywhere in one of the rooms. And then they find a letter in the boathouse about Muffy.
In the boat itself, actually.
In the officer's boat.
Right, okay. And the letter seems to state that Muffy has been institutionalized. They were both a little confused about that. And then it seems like we're learning that Muffy has a twin sister named Buffy.
Great moment.
Muffy has been Buffy this whole time. And they find Muffy's head behind the painting. So Muffy is Buffy. They were twins. And I guess Buffy's crazy. Muffy was murdered years ago, it seems like.
Well, no, that doesn't, we can't do that either. We can't say that because at the end, we see what happened to Muffy. So she wasn't murdered years ago. I'm wondering, was that somebody so inspired by this movie that they named their twin daughters Muffy and Buffy?
I hope so.
You think there's a Muffy and Buffy out there? I hope there's a Muffy and Buffy sisters out there.
So I loved that moment when she discovers, the girl from Friday the 13th Part 2 discovers that Muffy must have had a twin sister named Buffy. I mean, how did the actors deliver that line without cracking up? It's so good. And then, like, when they find the head behind the painting, like, the odds of that even happening, they just have, like, the flashlight happens to hit the painting and the eyes look so human behind the eye, like the eyes of the painting. It is kind of spooky looking. And Ken tells the girl from Friday the 13th Part 2 to remove the painting. He's like, take it down. And she's like, I don't think I can. And he's like, instead of like being like, okay, I understand why you're afraid. I have the friggin' weapon here. I don't know if he had a bat or something, but he had something. Instead of doing that, he's like, you know, you got to do it. He makes her take it down. Like, you don't know what's behind that.
Well, and she takes it down, and it come to find out it's Muffy's head.
Yes, rolls out.
So now we know Muffy is dead. There's her head on the ground. And right about then, Buffy is bursting through the window of the basement where they're trapped in.
Well, she's nailing the window shut.
And it's sort of a throwback to Black Christmas because that's where Olivia Hussey got trapped down in the basement when Peter came up to the basement window.
Okay, so then Buffy is chasing them with a big knife. She's coming after Kit, and she's seemingly trying to kill them. Kit and Ken get kind of separated. Ken seems like he's locked in a closet, and then Kit breaks in. Kit breaks into the living room, running from Buffy, and she sees everybody from the entire movie. Every character that's been in the movie up until this point is acting casually in the living room. They're all alive. No one's injured. Yeah, they're drinking. One of them's making a card pyramid. They're kind of quiet. And so they like don't even seem like they see Kit when she first walks in.
Right. They're pantomiming a conversation.
Yeah. She kind of is like yelling at them. And then they're all like, April Fools. And she says, fuck you.
Yeah. And then Muffy takes a knife and like stabs her own hand. And you see that it's a fake knife. But I have to say, we have people that are scream queens in horror movies. Ken became a scream king in this scene.
Oh my gosh.
He's in the closet and he is screaming his head off. And say what you will about the movie, those 4 minutes were absolutely brilliant. Because she's realizing, along with the audience who's also been piecing this all together outside of like her knowledge. So we're all we might be as the audience a little bit further ahead than her because we're watching it from a further distance. But for the most part, she's figuring out that this was a joke. We're figuring out that this was a joke. And the way they edited that together was absolutely like dark comedy gold. She's realizing my friends are alive. They're laughing. Muffy's laughing. You as a viewer are thinking, oh, these characters are alive. This isn't like the classic horror movie that I signed up for, and the pieces are coming together in your head. But poor Ken is still in the closet, and he's screaming that he loves her. And that cut where they're like realizing everything's okay, and he's still losing his mind, and he's like, I love you.
They finally say enough. We got to let this poor guy off the hook. And then somebody comes up from in the closet behind him.
Right. Buck from the beginning.
Scares the shit out of him. Yeah. And then lets him out.
Yeah. And Buck has like his face, crushed, I guess, like a prosthetic makeup on his face as he confronts Ken in this closet. And then he like takes it off as Ken's screaming and he puts it on Ken's face. And Ken leaves the closet and runs into the living room with Buck's prosthetic, special effect prosthetic on his face.
Flapping.
And everyone just thinks it's so funny.
Actually, at the end of the movie, Ken doesn't recover from this. Like,
I wouldn't either.
He doesn't get it's a prank, and he's just been pranked, like the ultimate prank, and he's still horrified.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much where the movie kind of ends. There's a little bit more, but this is, where we kind of see all the mechanics of what happened. And Muffy explains that it was not a twin. She does not have a twin sister named Buffy, but she has a twin brother, Skip, who I guess was one of the persons in the picture, maybe dressed as a girl. Looking back at that moment, I guess, because the family is so into pranks, I suppose that's what happened. I really have no idea. Muffy was an actress, by the way. I know we didn't mention this in the beginning, but in the very first scene, they kind of mention how, I think it was Nan said that she works with Muffy in like the theater program or whatever college they go to. She's like, isn't Muffy great? And everyone's like, yeah, she's fine. But she meant like as an actor, and Nan was into sewing, I guess, so that's how they knew each other. But we learned that Muffy was known as a really good actor very early on.
It's not just an elaborate prank. I think we have to fill everybody in that there's a rhyme and a reason for why she did all this, and she's
not a good one, but you're right.
You're like her beta audience. It's kind of weird.
She inherited the home and she was going to turn it into a bed and breakfast, but a bed and breakfast that was more like a whodunit weekend. And I guess the people who sign up for it don't know. And she made it a point to say, we'll be having, these scenarios, but they're not going to be nearly as extreme as what you guys went through. Like, thanks.
Yeah, really ridiculous scene here as she explains that. And then we see that there's a special effects person. I think it was Buck, who was like a special effects person. First of all, okay, let me just back up a little bit, because I think once you realize the twist at the end of this movie, a lot of the scenes earlier make no sense whatsoever. I'm convinced of this. I haven't watched it too closely with this lens, but I'm pretty sure, because so Buck, right, who was crushed by the boat in the barge against the dock, he has like a bloody face like immediately. Okay, he's a special effects guy. Fine, he's got the latex thing, but he's in the water. Like, how does he apply that to his face?
Movie magic.
No, that's fake magic. That's a bunch of bullshit. There's just no way.
Every person had a role except for the guest. The ferry guy, he had a role. He was in on it. Buck, the deckhand, had a role in it. Even the police officer was not really a police. He was an actor, right?
It was her uncle, I think.
Yeah, it was her uncle.
Yeah, her uncle. So this is a whole family affair. And as they would get each guest killed, not killed in real life, but as their character would die off, they would let them in on the prank. So each time a character was taken from us, they were let in on the prank that was going on.
Yeah.
How does that happen though? Like, play out just one of those scenes,
Exactly. Like Biff is hanging upside down, and I think it was her uncle. So in that moment, he had to have said to him, listen, this is all a prank. Your friends are all okay. Everybody's going to be okay. I'm actually her uncle. I'm going to need you to scream really loudly right now to make it seem like you've died, even though no one ends up like chasing him going into the woods to try to find him. Yeah, that moment had to happen. Or when he gets his genitalia cut off, he had to have been wearing that mask. Somehow his girlfriend had to have left, and that's the moment where Muffy comes out and says, everybody's okay, you just have to do this, lay here, we're going to put some prosthetics on you, and here's what the moments had to have been like 10 to 15 seconds where they're like, okay, I'm in on it.
Yeah, I call BS on all that. Every single one of those scenes.
This is where the movie at the end for me came together, and I was like, I like the idea. I'd like to see a remake of the movie where they did this, but without the cheesy conversation, without the 20-minute boat ride, and figure out some of those loopholes to work around. I think this could work as a pretty good remake. I'd definitely watch it if they tried to do it well.
It kind of feels a little unsatisfying to me because nobody really died. Like, what are we watching then? We're watching a slasher movie? We're watching a fake slasher movie? I don't know. There's at the end of the day, there's no stakes whatsoever.
So let's talk about the end of the movie. After they celebrated that this is all fake and everybody's alive.
Celebrated like they just won the NBA Finals, by the way. Splashing champagne.
Oh, champagne's flying everywhere. And that absolutely disgusting thing that Chaz does with the prosthetic head.
Yes.
I didn't think that they were going to take it all the way there, but he makes it look like she's performing oral sex on him.
That makes him that much of a more terrible character. But after all the celebrating's done, Muffy goes up to her room. She's tired. She sits on the bed,
drunk,
and there's a present there.
There's a gift waiting for her in her bedroom. And then she puts the bottle of champagne down on its side, and it's spilling off the table. Like, I don't know what happened
she's
there.
Drunk.
She's
drunk.
Yeah, but that's ridiculous. So she opens the present, and it's the Jack in the Box from earlier, and she starts to open it. We're kind of waiting for this like jump scare again from the beginning of the movie. And when it opens, Nan appears behind her, and she slashes Muffy's throat. But wait for it. It's not real either.
Here's where they could have killed it if they didn't show who it was and they actually murdered her. That would have been a fantastic ending.
Yeah,
no prank.
That would have been more satisfying.
A real death at the end, I think, would have been really cool. And you don't know who did it.
Yep. Cut to the house from a distance, and then you faintly hear screams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been great.
If they ever remade this, maybe that would be something to think about, because I think that would be a fantastic ending.
Did they not remake it?
They did remake it.
Did they really?
Did.
Yeah.
You're on the right track with that end being a little bit different. I think that would be great. April Fool's Day is the worst holiday.
Interesting tidbit about this movie. Back in the 80s, before DVDs came out, when did they come out? In the 90s?
Yeah, late 90s, I think, yeah.
The VHS tape of this movie was going on eBay for a lot of money. At one point, I think it was like $200, $300 or something. There was that much of a cult following for this movie, and it wasn't widely available on VHS. And it was one of these weird movies that you'd pay an arm and a leg. As Black Christmas was at one time. Black Christmas wasn't available until DVD widely on VHS, so it was one of those movies you had to pay an arm and a leg for.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone's paying that much for it. Kind of annoyed that I paid $4 to rent it.
Yeah, me too.
It would have been better to buy it. How much was the buy?
I don't know. Too much.
If you're gonna rewatch it, it's worth buying, but I don't ever plan on watching this again.
I did like when everybody at the end was celebrating, like they had won the NBA Finals. They played "Mama Told Me Not to Come."
Good placement. Yeah.
Yeah, good placement of that song. And then the end credits had a really bizarre song called "Too Bad You're Crazy."
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, too bad you're crazy. Yeah, very strange song, but it was kind of fitting for the end.
There's one plot hole that I didn't
Only one.
Well, this was a big character plot hole. It was the maid at the very beginning. Buffy's waiting for her friends to get there, and the only way off this island is by the ferry. So this maid says, "Well, you have a good weekend." They never show her again. How does she get back?
I guess that's a good question. She does say that she'll be back on Monday or after the weekend or something. So I don't know. I guess there was a boat that took her off at that point. Because, yeah, at that point it was before anyone had arrived at the house besides Muffy.
Because I thought of it as she's going to get on the ferry when it comes over to drop them off and ride back over to the mainland on that, and you never saw her again.
Also, does that dude use the gun that he had stashed away ever?
No, he broke a cardinal rule. Yes.
He was my favorite character. He was the funniest one out of all of them to me. And he seemed like the most mysterious, based on the fog thing that he was reading, that he was hid real quick because he almost didn't want anybody to know about it.
All right, so what rating system are we giving this one?
Jack in the Boxes.
Jack in the Boxes.
Jack in the Boxes. Oh, man. I don't know. I find this movie to be quite annoying, to be honest, because I just don't think a lot of these scenes would have been in the movie or would have happened in real life if this was all like an elaborate prank. Like all these characters who are in on the prank are talking to each other and not mentioning the prank just for the audience's benefit. And I just don't think a lot of those scenes were real. I'm sure that they probably did better than maybe I'm giving them credit for on that, because not everyone was in on it from the very beginning as we went over. They were all kind of let in as we go. It's just kind of frustrating, to be honest. Very frustrating ending, I think. I don't know. 4 out of 10 for me.
4 out of 10 Jack in the Boxes. Yeah, I'm with you on that, because like part of me just likes to be annoyed by it. There was a part of me that like it was nostalgic for me. I remember watching it when I was a kid, and it kind of fulfilled that part of me. But overall, like kind of a dud. So I'll go 4 as well. I'm
gonna give it 5 only because I like the premise, and I think it could have been done better without the terrible commentary, without all the terrible cheesy lines, without the 30-minute boat ride to get to the island that took up 2/3 of the movie. I think there could have been so much better. And at the end, had she really been killed by somebody and we were left to wonder who it was, I think that could have really added a lot. So I'll give it 5 just based on the promise that it had, but the actual movie itself was tough.
Your rating system is so generous that you're giving it more credit based on what it could have done that it never did.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes. Staying positive.
We got Easter coming up, and there's no shortage of Easter Bunny slashers.
Really?
Oh yeah. I got a couple here that I want to run by you guys offline a bit, but
how about Donnie Darko?
Donnie Darko's one of them, but I think that's too serious.
In other words, we wouldn't be laughing as much at some of the cheesy.
No, we would. We would be trying to like existentially break it down.
One of these days, I think you're going to invite me on to diagnose The Thing,
Ooh.
or The Shining.
Oh yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Yeah, let's do some good movies at some point.
Yeah. Actually, why don't we just start doing good movies now?
We could do that.
We could do that.
Well, we're running out of the holiday movies, so.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us here today, Morph, again, for these horror movie breakdowns. And thanks a lot for listening. We really appreciate it, everybody.
Always fun, guys.